This is a reading of Chapter 5 from Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. I hope you enjoy. Thou shalt not be dirty, and thou shalt not be impudent, were the two commandments of Grandmother Henderson upon which hung our total salvation. Each night in the bitterest winter, we were forced to wash faces, arms, necks, legs, and feet before going to bed. She used to add with a smirk that unprofane people can't control when venturing into profanity, and wash as far as possible, then wash possible. We would go to the well and wash in the ice cold, clear water, grease our legs with the equally cold, stiff Vaseline, then tiptoe into the house. We wiped the dust from our toes and settled down for schoolwork, cornbread, clabbered milk, prayers in bed, always in that order. Mamma was famous for pulling the quilts off after we had fallen asleep to examine our feet. If they weren't clean enough for her, she took the switch. She kept one behind the bedroom door for emergencies and woke up the offender with a few aptly placed, burning reminders. The area around the well at night was dark and slick, and boys told about how snakes love water, so that anyone who had to draw water at night and then stand there alone and wash knew that moccasins and rattlers, puff adders, and boa constrictors were winding their way to the well and would arrive just as the person washing got soap in her eyes. But Mamma convinced us that not only was cleanliness next to godliness, dirtiness was the inventor of misery. The impudent child was detested by God and a shame to its parents and could bring destruction to its house and line. All adults had to be addressed as Mr., Mrs., Miss, Auntie, Cousin, Uncle, Bubba, Sister, Brother, and a thousand other appellations indicating familial relationship and the loneliness of the addresser. Everyone I knew respected these customary laws except for the white trash children. Some families of white trash lived on Mama's farmland behind the school. Sometimes a gaggle of them came to the store, filling the whole room, chasing out the air, and even changing the well-known scents. The children crawled over the shelves and into the potato and onion bins, twanging all the time in their sharp voices like cigar box guitars. They took liberties in my store that I would never dare. Since Mama told us that the less you say to white folks or even white trash, the better, Bailey and I would stand solemn, quiet in the displaced air. But if one of the playful apparitions got close to us, I pinched it, partly out of angry frustration, and partly because I didn't believe in its flesh reality. They called my uncle by his first name and ordered him around the store. He, to my crying shame, obeyed them in his limping, straight fashion. My grandmother, too, followed their orders, except that she didn't seem to be servile because she anticipated their needs. Here's sugar, Miss Potter, and here's baking powder. You didn't buy soda last month. You'll probably be needing some. Mama always directed her statements to the adults, but sometimes, painful sometimes, the grimy, snotty-nosed girls would answer her. Nah, Annie. To Mama, who owned the land they lived on, who forgot more than they would ever learn. If there was any justice in the world, God should strike them dumb at once. Just give us some extra soda crackers and some more mackerel. At least they never looked her in her face, or I never caught them doing so. Nobody with a smidgen of training, not even the worst roustabout, would look right into a grown person's face. It meant the person was trying to take the words out before they were formed. The dirty little children didn't do that, but they threw their orders around the store like lashes from cat o' nine tails. When I was around 10 years old, these scruffy children caused me the most painful and confusing experience I had ever had with my grandmother. One summer morning after I had swept the dirt yard of leaves, spearmint gum wrappers, and Vienna sausage labels, I raked the yellow-red dirt and made half moons carefully so that the design stood out clearly and mask-like. I put the rake behind the store and came through the back of the house to find grandmother on the porch in her big, wide white apron. The apron was so stiff by virtue of the starch that it could have stood alone. Mama was admiring the yard, so I joined her. It truly looked like a flat redhead that had been raked with a big toothed comb. Mama didn't say anything, but I knew she liked it. She looked over toward the school principal's house and to the right at Mr. McElroy's. She was hoping one of those community pillars would see the design before the day's business wiped it out. Then she looked upward to the school. My head had swung with hers, so at just about the same time we saw a troop of the po white trash kids marching over the hill and down by the side of the school. I looked to Mamma for the direction. She did an excellent job of sagging from her waist down, but from the waist up, she seemed to be pulling for the top of the oak tree across the road. Then she began to moan a hymn. Maybe not to moan, but the tune was so slow and the meter so strange that she could have been moaning. She didn't look at me again. When the children reached halfway down the hill, halfway to the store, she said without turning, "Sister, go on inside." I wanted to beg her, "Mama, don't wait for them. Come on inside with me. If they come in the store, you go to the bedroom and let me wait on them. They only frighten me if you're around. Alone, I know how to handle them." But of course, I couldn't say anything, so I went in and stood behind the screen door. Before the girls got to the porch, I heard their laughter crackling and popping like pine logs in a cooking stove. I suppose my lifelong paranoia was born in those cold, molasses slow minutes. They came to they came finally to stand on the ground in front of Mama. At first they pretended seriousness. Then one of them wrapped her right arm in the crook of her left, pushed out her mouth, and started to hum. I realized that she was aping my grandmother. Another said, "Nah, Helen, you ain't standing like her. Here's it." Then she lifted her chest, folded her arms, and mocked that strange carriage that was Annie Henderson. Another laughed. "Nah, you can't do it. Your mouth ain't pooched out enough. It's like this." I thought about the rifle behind the door, but I knew I'd never be able to hold it straight. And the 410, our sawed-off shotgun, which stayed loaded and was fired every New Year's night, was locked in the trunk, and Uncle Willie had the key on his chain. Through the fly-specked screen door, I could see that the arms of Mama's apron jiggled from the vibrations of her humming, but her knees seemed to have locked as if they would never bend again. She sang on, no louder than before, but no softer either, no slower or faster. The dirt of the girls' cotton dresses continued on their legs, feet, arms, and faces to make them all of a piece. Their greasy, uncolored hair hung down, uncombed, with a grim finality. I knelt to see them better, to remember them for all time. The tears that had slipped down my dress left unsurprising dark spots and made the front yard blurry and even more unreal. The world had taken a deep breath and was having doubts about continuing to revolve. The girls had tired of mocking Mama and turned to other means of agitation. One crossed her eyes, stuck her thumbs in both sides of her mouth, and said, "Look here, Annie." Grandmother hummed on, and the apron strings trembled. I wanted to throw a handful of black pepper in their faces, to throw lye on them, to scream that they were dirty, scummy, peckerwoods, but I knew I was as clearly imprisoned behind the scene as the actors outside were confined to their roles. One of the smaller girls did a kind of puppet dance while her fellow clowns laughed at her, but the tall one, who was almost a woman, said something very quietly, which I couldn't hear. They all moved backward from the porch, still watching Mama. For an awful second I thought they were going to throw a rock at Mama, who seemed, except for the apron strings, to have turned into stone herself. But the big girl turned her back, bent down, and put her hands flat on the ground. She didn't pick up anything. She simply shifted her weight and did a handstand. Her dirty bare feet and long legs went straight for the sky. Her dress fell down around her shoulders, and she had on no drawers. The slick pubic hair made a brown triangle where her legs came together. She hung in the vacuum of that lifeless morning for only a few seconds, then wavered and tumbled. The other girls clapped her on the back and slapped their hands. Mama changed her song to bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. I found that I was praying too. How long could Mama hold out? What new indignity would they think of to subject her to? Would I be able to stay out of it? What would Mama really like me to do? Then they were moving out of the yard on their way to town. They bobbed their heads and shook their slacks slack behinds, and turned one at a time. Bye, Annie. Bye, Annie. Bye, Annie. Mama never turned her head or unfolded her arms, but she stopped singing and said, Bye, Miss Helen. Bye, Miss Ruth. Bye, Miss Eloise. I burst. A firecracker, July the 4th burst. How could Mama call them Ms.? The mean, nasty things. Why couldn't she have come inside the sweet, cool store when we saw them breasting the hill? What did she prove? And then if they were dirty, mean, and impudent, why did Mama have to call them Ms.? She stood another whole song through and then opened the screen door to look down on me, crying in rage. She looked until I looked up. Her face was a brown moon that shone on me. She was beautiful. Something had happened out there which I couldn't completely understand, but I could see that she was happy. Then she bent down and touched me as mothers of the church lay hands on the sick and afflicted, and I quieted. Go wash your face, sister. Then she went behind the candy counter and hummed, Glory, glory, hallelujah, when I lay my burden down. I threw the well water on my face and used the weekday handkerchief to blow my nose. Whatever the contest had been out front, I knew Mama had won. I took the rake back to the front yard. The smudged footprints were easy to erase. I worked for a long time on my new design and laid the rake behind the wash pot. When I came back in the store, I took Mama's hand and we both walked outside to look at the pattern. It was a large heart with lots of hearts growing smaller inside, and piercing from the outside rim to the smallest heart was an arrow. Mama said, Sister, that's right pretty. Then she turned back to the store and resumed, Glory, glory, hallelujah, when I lay my burden down. Next time I see you, we will read chapter 6. Thank you for listening.